Okay. So again, working with simplicity, and, I think I must have shot this image about maybe 6 times, which is really amazing when you're working in double exposure with large format. For me, when I think back, I was like, how was I able to do that? But why, keeping keeping things secret or hiding or your certain emotions or certain things that you've done inside, and just the simpleness of the hand over, slightly touching the lip. And, it just took a long time to make. And when I look back at this, it's like, it's, it was successful, but after many tries. So let me keep going. This is untitled. I don't remember exactly when this one was, but again, this one is untitled number, I believe it's number 8. I thought I titled them, but I can't see them now because
this one says 4.
Okay, I can't see them because I have this bar here. Let me see. Okay, I moved it to the side. All right. So yeah, so again, playing with light, and using light, again, these sort of ideas of duality, 2 people in one, and just and one looking back at the other, or one looking down at the other, and just dealing with these different emotions. This one is entitled Feeling Blue. I'm going to stop moving through because I don't want to be too long. This one is entitled Red Fingernails. So again, playing with the concept of, when you think back on conversations that you've had with people, and, there's this playing off of the ideas of, in Islam, the women are not supposed to wear nail polish, especially red nail polish. And these were ideas that you would hear circulating through community, or that you would have with people. And so using little simple ideas to sort of it with sarcasm. So when I showed the previous body of work, I'm not sure what happened. It's scrolling through the images. All right, we're going to just move forward. I'll just keep going. But when I showed the previous body of work, I had one exhibition where I showed my family portraits in unison with the self-portraits, the studio, like stage self-portraits. And this one is called 1390 Boys. These are some of my brothers. And, so I would always shoot in the studio, but I would always come back to the city and photograph the family, because it was sort of this sort of documenting process throughout the years of just taking pictures of them and their different stages. This one is called Adashima and Madani. And this is Adashima a few years later, some years later, actually, I'm not even sure, it was 1999, right? Of her. This one is Kofi and Pincushion. So, just showing the emotions of, of what people go through, and what people, and in this shot I captured Odia. This is Odia, one of my older sisters, and she's seamstress, but, there was so much going on in this picture, but, the focus of the pincushion, meaning that, this is what she does, but then you have in the background, her children and what she's going through in her motherhood. And this is Kofi years later. Kofi with African mask. This is Naima and Madani. And this is years later. Three Sisters with Three Thoughts in 2007. So this was after, there was a point in time where I was traveling and I was away, and this was a series revisiting home. So the first series of images were earlier images from 1999, 1998 was the commencement of redocumenting my siblings, but then I took a break, and then I came back. When I had come back, and I traveled, I was away actually. I was in the Gambia, in West Africa, and I think I came back in this year, and I wanted to photograph my family again, sort of a period of time of gap. And then I wanted to come back and sort of revisit. Series is from revisiting home. This is an older one. This is my mother, Umi, and grandma. So just showing the 3 generations of here. This is Ibn and Shani in 1999. And then years later, this is Ibn and Priest, son. Yemia and Warda. So in 2003, I believe it was, 2003, 2004, sorry, sorry, I get my dates kind of mixed up, but I think it's 2003.
This is 2004.
Yeah, 2004. I did the Lightwork Artists in Residency in Syracuse. And during that time, you're given a month to create a body of work. And I wanted to move away from doing the self-portraits. At the time, there was a lot of sort of unrest and in the media, a lot of talk about the Islamic community and terrorism. And my mind was just, really focused on what kind of work or what I could do to make have commentary on what was going on. And so I took the month, and when I went to Syracuse, I had this idea of, creating prayer beads, which is generally in across religions is looked at as something very, it's very religious, very spiritual, and like sort of something for use of remembering God. So something peaceful, right? And I wanted to take it out of that element and bring it into sort of a different environment, which was, to suggest something else. And so I created these evidence tags. And it was funny, I remember, it's funny, I was just reading reading an email I had sent to the police department up there at the time when all of these things were going on. And I think I had asked one of the sergeants, is it possible that I can have some evidence tags or something like that? And when I think about it, it's just like, they probably said this Muslim woman with this name asking for, stuff from the police department, which of course is probably official. You couldn't do that. But so anyway, I created the evidence tags on my own and, had them printed out. And what I wanted to do was sort of play on this idea that Islam being a very vast religion, beautiful religion, which has people from all walks of life, from countries, and that look different, that has so many variations in the way they look. And so I used words and, created, sort of these ideas of why these cases were created. So the people are no longer sort of, it's a portrait of a person, but it's no longer about the person. It's about this sort of generalizing, and the idea of generalizing people and not really looking at the person, but using something like prayer and something that's supposed to be a peaceful or religion of peace, and really playing off of those ideas of it, not being terrorists, but looking at individuals for who they are. And so I'll just go through the series. And so I photograph people from the community up there as well as in the city. Throughout many of the series that I work, and I do go back to doing self-portraits, so I do insert myself. And I think in almost series that I've done, it's just a way of revisiting the self-portrait that I had started off with. I don't know if everyone can see the tags.
Yes.
Okay, and read the words and stuff that I had created. And I had random people actually from the community, not from the Muslim community, but just up in Syracuse. They're the ones, they had to fill out the forms, fill out the cards based on a multiple, like a list of multiple choices, and they would fill it in based on that. So the community that wasn't Muslim kind of partook in this idea of being involved in the project as well. So this image, these images are, let's see, that's from 2006. So when I finished the residency, this is when I came back. Again, I was traveling and I had come back, and I still dealing with some of the issues of, you know, the fragility of the relationship of the Muslim community and in United States and globally, actually, to be honest with you, and just really wanted to explore those issues more. And so this series is actually called America, the Red, White, and Blue. And it was just my sort of quick commentary on the meaning behind the colors of the flag of the United States, and what, you know, playing off of what those meanings, those colors represented. And, you know, the exotic other, red being the threat. I think if anyone knows, like the colors, meaning the red stands for the great threat. The blue is the scale of the justice system. And then the white being the, forget what the white was again. I thought it was purity. I think it was purity, but I can't remember exactly. But so just sort of flipping that around, and, you know, the exotic other, and how people from other or immigrant communities, or who are other than this idea of what American is, you know, or what American should be for some, and sort of playing off of that, the exotic other, but sort of very staunch, scary, almost scary, when you look at the expressions and stuff, where intimidating the image. And so when I made these two first, I wanted to balance it off a little bit, and sort of, and this is where the last one was made with the scale of justice, but really using it as, you know, the weight of peace, and, you know, and this sort of stern holding of the bead, and then just sort of being the balance in the middle. And the pledge, you know, what do you pledge to, you know, I think it's self-explanatory, so I don't want to go too much into it. This in 2003, I think this is during the time that I was teaching at the university in South Florida down there. And you know, I had a lot of space, and I was able to work with, you know, some of the ideas that I went to work with in the past, which is dealing, you know, this idea of shame and relationships outside of, you know, the idea of concept of not being married. And so I explored this body of work. And I remember this was exhibited, these works were requested in Italy, and the people had so many questions, and, you know, but it wasn't really about, it was about the work, but it was more so about, you know, the dynamic and of you know, relationships, and so pink, if you can see, like the pink and the fabric, you know, it was really tough making this body work. And it's interesting, because looking at it now, this is years later, wanting to show it, like, I think I remember my mother was, when I showed her this picture, she was like, well, what does it mean? Like, she was very, almost like disturbed by the image, because she, you know, doesn't know how.
Good sign.
Huh?
It's a good sign when your parents are disturbed by your
yeah, you know, because, you know, some things she you know, if it's just a traditional portrait, oh, that's really lovely. But when it gets to certain things, it's like, you know, well, what does that mean, you know? And so it's, you don't really want to explain it too much, but, or I said, well, what do you think it means? You know? But again, this is just like dealing with, you know, maybe shame and relationship. And for me, you know, when I was looking back, when I look back, when I look now at it, you know, it's fine. But, you know, as a Muslim, you know, if you consider, you know, if you're a Muslim woman and you have an image like this, you know, what do you think, how do you think people feel, or how do you think people are going to take the work? But I'm comfortable with that, you know, like, you know, people are never going to accept everything. You're always going to have people who are not in agreement with your work or your ideas. So this one is called The Gaze. This is extended veil. This is also made with one piece of fabric, and it's just sort of the sisterhood, the unity, and, you know. Sometimes when I look at this image, I feel like this should be called The Gaze, because, you know, no one is actually looking. Everyone, and it's the idea of the, you know, you're supposed to that gaze. You're not supposed to look someone, and you're supposed to, you know, gaze. You know, your gaze should be down. You know, just sort of playing off of that. But it's called the extended veil because for me it celebrates the unity of the sisterhood. This one is called Peas in a Pod. You know, and I think I made this, I think, during when I was in Florida. But I think for me, as I'm looking now, not now, but then too, you know, some of my inspirations come from just fabric. And, you know, I learned how to sew at 8, when I was 8 years old. And, you know, sewing and creating and stuff was always something that I would love to do, and with fabric. And so I would always find myself sometimes pacing and going into fabric stores and stuff like that. That's really one of the places where I found inspiration later on in my work. And I remember finding this fabric, Peas in a Pod, and you think about peas in a pod, and everyone knows what that concept means. And I love the fabric. I thought it was sort of fun and playful. And then I took the fabric home, and I just had it. I think I left it out for like maybe a good month before, because I was just thinking on it, like, what did I want to do with this? And then that's where this series was created, to be honest with you. And it again looks at where I find myself, or how I viewed myself, you know, or where I wanting to be 3 but in one person, and, you know, celebrating my Islam, celebrating wanting to wear my tight jeans and showing, you know, and feeling sexy, right? And then also celebrating African heritage and growing up in a certain way which was different, and using that sort of to look back at, you know, all these different stages that I found myself wanting to be a part of. And can you really be a part of one, or can you be multiple people, or multiple having multiple ideas in one as an individual? I don't know if that makes sense, but I think sometimes, you know, as you get older, well, you know, or growing, as you know, the growing process, you struggle, or you think about where it is and what do you want to represent yourself as, or who do you want to be? And you can be all. And I think that as you go through life, and as you, you know, have certain experiences, you realize that you can fit in and be all of those, you know, and be comfortable with that. So I'm going to move on. This
multiplicity of the self.
Yes, it sounds weird, you know, when you look. I was looking at some images. Let me finish there's a lot to go through, but this is Locker Room Liberation. And, you know, throughout my work, so I guess it skipped through now. Let me see how can I go? Okay, yeah. So that's Locker Room Liberation. So if you remember from the earlier work that I did, the Untitled #1, where I was in front of the kitchen, during points of my art making, I would always revisit that idea of, like, with red fingernails, wearing the white, and so that idea of purification and you know, seeing myself in this, you know, idea, this in purity, as purity, you know, and using white, or what white represented, you know. And so always sort of recreating the white, but at different stages in my art making. This is going back again, you know, the judgment. You know, it's interesting how different communities respond or different people respond to work. And I had this put on social media, I think on one of my accounts, and it was interesting, the responses, you know, from the Muslim community. There was, you know, there was hardly any comments on it. Some people made a comment on it, but, you know, others did. And you had, you know, people were like, well, I like the other work. And, you know, I think it's interesting how people respond to certain things. And this is double exposures, self-portrait of, you know, the idea of judging. You know, everyone can judge. It doesn't matter who, you know, how you look, you know, as you're judging, someone else is judging you. So judgment is not necessary, right? Just be who you are. Okay, so going back to this is from the Revisiting Home series. I, you know, took that break. I took a little break, but then I came back into the photo documenting of my family again, my siblings. This is Mazi. Asadalo in turban. And so this is from the series called the Grand Boubou. And the Grand Boubou is a type of dress worn in throughout most of West Africa by the women. It's usually worn at, it's everyday. You can wear it as an everyday garment, but you find a lot of it being worn in ceremonies, weddings, naming ceremonies, prayer. And so I wanted to sort of document, you know, the women who wear these, and not only just to dress, but them in their environments. And it's a piece of clothing that never was for over centuries, you know, old, and it sort of reinvents itself in how it's worn and how it's designed. And so I wanted to document this body. I wanted to talk about this image because there was a point in my work where I had to stop. There was a tragedy very close to me, and I stopped. I literally stopped after that, but in 2005, and I was working on this body of work. And I remember meeting this woman. She was mourning the death of her husband, actually. And we had a really interesting conversation. And what she believed was that she believed that, and I was talking with her and someone else, but she believed that, you know, some people have the idea if you married once and then the husband died and then you marry again and also the death, that it's not so much bad luck, but they say that you're married to, you have they call it a jinn, but they say you're married to, you know, and it will not accept, you know, you being with someone else, you know, married to someone else. And so it was a very interesting conversation that I had, but I wanted to talk about that picture. I included this, but this was done in 1999, which is years earlier. And I wanted to put this into the series. So this is a self-portrait also. And I did this, I believe it was, I had photographed this one. So when I was talking to the woman in the previous picture that I was telling you about, it was interesting for me. I around this time is when I had really had stopped making my work. So it was around, but I came back to it a little bit, but then I had stopped again. So I wanted to, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know if we have time. Do we have time?
I think we have like 5 minutes because I'd like to leave like a good 5 to 10 minutes at least for.
So I'm almost done. So I'll just, I want to show this because this was also an inspiration of some of the newer work. So this was done on September 11th of 2020. That's my daughter, but I wanted to put the video in there. So these are from the Dreams and Prayer series. So I'm just going to go through them quickly. So these are my newest body of work. I started in 2000, right after the pictures that I showed you of them. But that's where some of the inspirations came from in this body of work, but we can talk about it. I'll just show it and then we can talk about it later. So this is full circle from the new about. This is what I'm working on currently. The titles are wrong. This is called Pink, Barefoot with Pink Slippers is the title of this. I'm sorry, Pregnant with Pink Slippers. Sorry about that. This is from the full circle series that I'm working on. And I think that that's the end. So let me.
Thank you so much. There's some comments. Alonso says, I love seeing African homes. We never see this. I do think that there's something.
We're talking about the series and
the work in Gambia.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I feel generally that I love seeing the interiors, of like your siblings and just the interiors. There's something, I feel like the mixture of fabrics that you're so interested in and interior spaces and sort of like, the designs of the interiors. I feel like this combination is so interesting, including sort of your representation of the person. It seems like it's all very, intersected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just love that this is such a wonderful expansion of our imagination of Blackness, like from so many different angles, right? So on the one hand, like I love all this work that you've done on your family and your own identity and informing our imagination of Blackness with different religions. So we're not thinking about Christianity and we're thinking about Muslim identity and how that connects Black people to other cultures as well. But like I keep looking at these images in the Gambia and I just keep thinking, this is such a way that we as Americans cannot imagine Africa typically.
Yes, yeah, yes, I agree, and I think that one of the reasons why, I had a studio there when I was working, and I could have just had them come to the studio, but there's something about, for me, photographing people in their environment. There's so much you can get from that when you create a photograph, and the person is also comfortable. And then you're having this dialogue, you're having conversation with them while you're photographing. And one of the things about view camera that I must say is that it slows everything down. These were shot with view camera. There's a few of my images, not many, but a few of them are shot with digital. which it changes it, but you can still slow it down. But with view camera, it really makes you slow down, and almost to the point where I felt like people were getting tired of me because I would just sort of slow in that process of photographing. But it's great. It's all about that experience, and people really appreciate, you know, you taking time and you having a conversation. You're not just in and out. You really are spending time with them. I've had shoots that would last hours, but after it, I just felt like the people, you know, we loved each other. You know, there was just so much dialogue and just so much that you got out of the experience. And so, yes, the Gambia was very important photographing because on the opposite opinion of what people think about how people live in Africa, you know, it's really like, these are society women, like, and you know, you have in every culture, you have your, you know, you have your different classes and the way people live, but you don't get to see that all the time in Africa. And I think showing that was very important for me. So you can see, like, these are the, you know, the way these women live, and, you know, and they're proud. They're very proud, and, you know, and very comfortable with whatever conditions they are, and very humble, you know. And then going back to my family, yes, I think, you know, seeing the environment and how people live, it is very important. It tells you so much. And like I was saying with Arnold Newman, you saw the environment, it just spoke to you so much about that person. Sorry to talk. Okay, I'm gonna let y'all go.
No, I feel that you're adding a lot. Is there any other question or comment from anyone else?
Yes, I have a comment.
Sure.
So these are beautiful, beautiful pictures, and just like the people in the African dress and the kind of environments and things, like, this is beautiful. It reminds me like of the vintage photos taken during the Ottoman times, almost. When they used to take the pictures of the ladies and like the harem, it just kind of felt very familiar and strange and intimate, like we shouldn't be seeing it, but we're seeing like the pictures of the people in the house. So it's a really like strange, intimate feeling that one gets from looking at your images, especially of the ones in Gambia where the people are hanging around in their house. Just really like makes you feel a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just scrolling through. I'm going to continue just to scroll through the images as we're talking, just to,
I'm very curious about sort of like the early work being so personal, so autobiographical, almost like diary entries, you know, around shame and relationships and sort of like that intersection between that plus the sort of, you know, more straight portraiture. You know, did you feel propelled to use the camera to talk about your emotional world? I mean, was this sort of, you know, like a release for you to have that?
Absolutely. And it's artist therapeutic. And when you think about it, any type of process, when you think about artists and the great artists that you know, that schools teach us about, what makes their work so great, or what makes it so interesting, and is the stories behind it. For me, you know, the things that they suffered, or the loves, or the relationships, and you know, hearing that Van Gogh had cut off his, you know, the ear, like just all of these sort of different stories that you heard, right? And you wondered, what were people going in, what were the artists dealing with internally to make them express themselves in their painting or with the photography. And for me, I hadn't seen a lot of, I didn't see a lot of Black art. Like when I was in graduate school or in undergraduate school, I saw great work and, you know, by great artists, but I didn't see a lot. And a lot of the photography that I saw from the Black community or from the African American community were really just it was very sort of straight on portraits, a lot of portraits, a lot of documenting of our people, which was something that was very nice to see, because you know, it was your experience. You saw your experience in front of the lens. But what I didn't see so much of was that sort of very conceptual, delving into that sort of conceptual idea or how to approach the work in that way. And for me, it was very tough. It was really hard. Like, how would you show, like, how do you want to show this? Like, how do you approach this? And I spent hours and hours because I was dealing with a lot of self and inner, I guess, insecurities, really change also, you know, from what I grew up with, how I dressed, you know, those things would always linger in my mind constantly, you know, and, you know, you can actually like visualize it, you see it. And so I wanted to create what was in my imagination. So I really like setting up these dynamics was very important for me to explore. And very hard, but then at the same time it was celebrating, it was dealing, like you said, like sort of visual journal entries is exactly what it was. And putting your personal life out in your work is something that's very hard because people can take it any kind of way, you know. People, you know, everyone has their ideas, so you put it out there and you just hope that, you know, people are exposed or open-minded enough to accept what it is that you're creating and try to understand. But beyond that, you want it to be beautiful, I think. And, you know, I think as an artist, one of the things we all struggle with is how do you make work that's strong visually, but also that speaks to so many different levels intellectually and being able to communicate those ideas. And I think that's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for your generous talk. I just wanted to say that, like, I'm Iranian. I was raised in Muslim community. And considering that, it's like really interesting and strange at the same time to see some other person's experience that I can relate to, but at the same time, it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
And like there are so many things in your work that I can see. Like I feel like there were so many different ways that you could go to kind of present this community, and like there were so many different subjects that you could choose. And I guess my question is, like, how did you find your own perspective and how did you choose, like, what were the things that you wanted to show and the things that you wanted to, like, keep unsaid? Like, how did you find your own angle and chose your own subject?
I think that that's a work in progress always. It's just like a person that's growing over time. Like, you go through so many different experiences in your life, right? So in my earlier work, it was so much about self. It was always about identity. It was a struggle with the way I dressed, the relationships, hiding, you know, inner thoughts. And so that was one point. And that was like a chapter. Like you say, you have chapters in your life. And then you move on from that because you accept that. You accept where you are. And, you know, it doesn't matter so much about what people think, but it just matters what's within, right? And so you see the growth. I see it now, and actually when I'm looking back, but I see the growth from my work. Like with objects of investigation, I literally had said to myself at one point, okay, it's time to stop photographing yourself and let's move beyond and really focus on communal issues, right? You know, so when you think about people, you know, you have the capsule of self, and then you have your community, and then you have global. So you know, how do you move on so you can make an impression and touch more than one person or more than a smaller body of people? And I think what I really wanted to do with objects of investigation was, listen, this is not the community that we're being depicted as. It's a peaceful community. It's a peaceful religion. And how do I want to show that? But also playing on the idea of there should be no fear. Religion, you know, where's the fear in religion? It only becomes fearful when it is taken to a level of extremity, right? And that's not only with Islam, but that's with anything in life. Anything that goes to a level of extreme, it becomes sort of your borderline being sort of it's on danger, right? So you're in dangerous territory. So there's that balance. I think that it's very important, and being able to accept differences within yourself and differences also with people around you. And it exists. And so embracing that, right? And I think that, so looking at the work, and when I look back now and where it has come to, you know, with the newer work that I have here called Dreams and Prayer, I just wanted to come to this. This was, it was almost like an epiphany for me, coming to this work. And I show this being so the inspiration with the patterns. Like Rochelle said, I'm highly influenced by patterns and textures. So my eyes just, you know, like anyone, you get drawn to it. But that's where a lot of my inspirations come from, to be honest with you. Patterns, looking at things, seeing something, and then going home and you write about it, or you remember that this is something I want to do. And this particular work that I just started, like, there's something very surreal to it for in this body of work. And the way it came about and is literally through, like, I get up and I pray early in the morning, right? At 4 o'clock in the morning when it's really quiet outside. And my mind hits like another realm where just like you're thinking about all of these different things. And to be honest with you, a lot of my inspiration, especially now, later in my life, a lot of my inspirations come in my work those times. And so what I have to do is, like, I'm sort of tired, whatever, but I up and then I have this big sheet of paper behind my bed, and I'm literally like writing at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I said, okay, do I look like a crazy? I said, like, you know, you start to ask yourself, you know, but it's not crazy, but it's like inspiration. And as an artist, you got to tap into it whenever you can, especially now when you're older, like for me, and I'm outside of the education environment. And I think that what y'all have as an advantage is being in school, and being in art school is a complete advantage. And years later, you'll look back and you'll say, wow, I had to capitalize on it now. And I have to say, because the community is there when you come out of school, but the way you have it now, there's so much, because you're in that thought process, in that creative making mode. And that's where you get a lot of your inspiration also. So it doesn't only come from within, it comes from the community around you, and the dialogue and the sharing. And that's really where a lot of creativity comes out of. And just being able to appreciate that and taking advantage of it now. And it's so, I can't express how important it is, because you have that time, you know. So, you know, and this work is, for me, this really is called Dreams and Prayer, but for me, it's like full circle, because for 15 years, I took a break from my work, a real serious break. And, you know, it was a struggle, like literally I'm celebrating in these images here, because it came from afar. I had a long, hard and far journey to get back to this. And so for me, it's really like visually looking at it, I wanted to say, you know, how do you create that wow, you know, visually working with textures, revisiting the image of white and celebrating that, you know, going back all the way to the beginning image, if you remember from Entitled One, and being in that white and that same sort of stare and looking back. So it's really celebrating the journey that I've been through, and motherhood, and you know, and the struggles, you know, this is marriage, say, you know, using a different language in the work. So there's so many different layers in this body of work, which I can appreciate. It's the Islam, it's the African culture, it's using the traditional items that you used in life, that I, you know, when you know, through your marriage, or, you know, and just using patterns and textures and to celebrate those experiences. And so, you know, water sick, you know, this is luck.
I'm sorry, Nzingah, we're coming to the end of our time, but I just want to ask one question, and then if someone else has a last question, we'll take it. But I'm so curious by how growing up, you know, different in New York, with, you know, dressing different, having lots of siblings, and sort of how, you know, choosing, or maybe not choosing, maybe photography chose you to arrive to photography, because, you know, you could have done so many other things. You're a person with so many talents, and, you know, sewing, just so much. So what was it that photography, you know, why go to photo with you know,
Well, I thought I went through this at the beginning, but I didn't. Now that I realize, so I started photography probably around 15 or 16. My father was very interesting character, as you must imagine, with 30 kids, right? But I grew up in a polygamous family in Brooklyn, and he was like this sort of Renaissance man, was in and everything. We had, you know, in my family, in the house growing up, we had dignitaries from Africa come to us. We had religious imams from United States would come to our home. We had politicians. We always had people at our house. We had always had guests at our, like guests and visitors and stuff. And my father was a very creative person as well, but he saw people and saw talents. And I guess early on, he saw that I was a creative child. And so he gave me a camera. He gave me a Nikon EL2. That was my first camera. He gave it to me at 16, which was a really nice camera. And he said, but he was about business. He was like, I want you to, you know, take your camera and shoot. And, you know, you can go out to the festivals and the African Street Festival, which was a really big festival in Brooklyn, and go and photograph people. And he had a print shop. And so he would, you know, I remember going to these festivals and photographing people. I have, like when I say I have negatives, I have a lot of negatives which need to be scanned in. But I would go and photograph people, portraits. And this is, I was about 15 or 16, and I would come back home and I learned photography. There was a few people who taught me, one being Robert Cave and another man named Lem. My father had this Robert Cave actually teach me how to do tabletop printing. So before I went into undergraduate school, I was doing tabletop printing in color. My father gave me a dark room in our house. We had these two brownstones in Brooklyn, pushed up against it, right next to each other, but they were gutted out in the middle like a big house, you know? And so my dark room was in the basement of one of the brownstones. And I remember tabletop developing color with the chemicals part. That's probably why I'm like this now, but you know, remember you know, printing in color without a big processing machine. I was doing tabletop color printing, and I would process my negatives and print. And so I would run back home, like literally the festival before a week, I'd run, take the pictures of all the vendors and the people. And then towards the end of the festival, I had everyone's pictures already printed and was selling the pictures. And that's how I would make money. Like I would sell, I forgot, maybe $5 or $10 I was selling them for portraits, and they would die cut it out. My father had this printing business, like I said, and he created these gold African frames with a die cut. And so when you open the frame, the people's picture was in with Africa, and their portraits were right there in the frame. And so I made a good amount of money doing that. But it was interesting for me. So after that, I decided, you know, I really want to go to school, to college, and I applied, and that's where I went to SUNY Purchase. And from there, you know, I learned, you know, the business, you leave it aside, but you really learn the process of the, you know, thinking and how to create and how do you speak? How do you make your images speak? And so I can't be thankful enough for going to graduate and undergraduate school and really learning that, because it's where you process your work. It's like, you know, you have your idea of what you want to do, but it's the time that you can take and think and be creative that's so much more important than just producing and stuff like that. But you know, when you have that, you know, it's endless, the possibilities of what you can do.
Let's take one more question if anyone has one, or a last comment. Just if anyone has a last comment or question. Okay, it seems like
okay.
we're all exhausted. We're all Zoom exhausted. But yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so much more we could ask, you know, in relationship to your family and sort of the psychological, because your work, more than a lot of other photographers, artists that I can think of, especially earlier on, it's very psychological. So it's very interesting to see, you know, how you gave yourself the freedom to probe your emotional world with a camera.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to do, to put yourself in front of you. It's hard in that sort of, psychologically it's hard, but it's also hard in terms of you know, just the setup is hard. It was hard. It took hours to
The work.
do. You know, it took hours to complete.
Mhm.
And you're just there in a studio by yourself at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you just, your mind is just going on, like
Mhm.
ways of approaching your emotions. How do you approach? I mean, really, how do you approach your inner, these inner feelings that you have? You know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
it is hard. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. That was really, really fantastic. I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you took time to come to our class, which is all about, it's all about psychoanalysis, this class, and image making. So I
Right.
feel like there's a deep connection between the work you're showing and what we've been talking about all semester. So thank you so much. And if anyone has questions for Nzingah later, I'm sure she can be reached via email.
Mhm.
So
Definitely.
thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure talking, and I really wish all of your students and visual scholars the best. A very long and fruitful career. It is not an easy task, but you know, stay at it. That's the only advice I can say is stay true to what you love to do, and you would always see success in it.
Yeah.
And I really wish all of y'all the best, and I look forward to seeing some of your names and some of your work. Share with me. I'm on Instagram. I just finally, after how many years, I've published my website. And so, you know, I'm excited now, and I feel like I'm coming into another chapter in my image making. And so I appreciate, thanks for having me, Rochelle.
Thank you so much. Yes, we will be in touch. And if there's questions, I'll give your email if someone wants to contact you.
Definitely. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
So much.
Bye.
Bye.